Frankenstein by Mary Shelley has been adapted hundreds of times. But in popular culture, the original story has been ripped apart and reconstructed as a sort of monster, so different from the source that it is often unrecognizable. And then Netflix, a platform known for making some questionable choices when turning beloved classics into films, decided to produce yet another adaptation. So I was kind of worried. But I also felt hopeful. Hi, I'm Juliet. I have a degree in language and literature, and I love Frankenstein. I've read it multiple times, I've made videos about it, I even organized a book club about this novel. And now I've just watched the movie directed by Guillermo del Toro, probably just like you, and I have a couple of thoughts. But first, I think it's worth asking ourselves some big questions. Why does a Gothic novel written over 200 years ago by a young woman still obsess the world? Why is Frankenstein so powerful, and why do we keep killing it only to revive it? The life of Mary Shelley. This woman's life was the pinnacle of the Gothic experience. Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin, see how her mother's surname came first, was born in London in 1797. She was the daughter of William Godwin, a politician and writer, and Mary Wollstonecraft, a feminist philosopher and writer best known for A Vindication of the Rights of Women. This essay established that women deserved the same fundamental rights as men, so many people thought she was absolutely insane. Unfortunately, Mary's mother didn't survive childbirth, and the little girl was raised by her father, surrounded by intellectuals and artists. A follower and benefactor of William Godwin was the famous poet Percy Shelley, who met Mary when she was only 16. He was married and had children, but they started an affair anyway. As you can imagine, their families weren't very happy about their relationship, so they left for France, and they lived in different countries all around Europe for the next couple of years. But this had a toll on their finances, and Mary's health deteriorated. She had multiple miscarriages and gave birth to 4 children, but only one survived infancy, which devastated Mary. While she grieved the loss of her children, Percy practiced free love with other women. This channel disapproves of Percy Shelley. However, during these turbulent times, an event would change literary history. In 1816, the couple spent the summer in Switzerland with their famous friend, the poet Lord Byron, and his doctor, John Polidori. But don't think they enjoyed blue skies and flowering meadows. 1816 is known as the year without a summer, when temperatures were abnormally low and it rained constantly as a consequence of a massive eruption of a volcano all the way in Indonesia. This terrible weather kept them confined for days in the house, and they managed to entertain themselves with creepy tales. One evening, Lord Byron proposed a challenge. Each of them should write a ghost story. Mary combined her grief, terrifying tales, visions she had in dreams, and philosophical and scientific discussions to create a haunting story. With Percy's help, the novel was revised and edited, and it was published anonymously in 1818 when Mary was only 20 years old. Early adaptations. When it was first published, Frankenstein received mixed reviews, but it was an immediate popular success. Since the early days, the novel has been widely known for its adaptations. It all started in the theater. Presumption, or The Fate of Frankenstein, a 1823 play by Richard Brinsley Peake, was the first adaptation of the novel. This play inaugurated a tradition of loose adaptations that would forever impact the popular conception of Frankenstein. This melodramatic play created the figure of the scientist assistant, named Fritz here, and then then commonly known as Igor. And they created the phrase, "It lives," which then originated one of the most iconic lines associated with Frankenstein, "It's alive." However, the most important difference with the novel is that the creature couldn't speak. There are several theories about why the creature is deprived of speech, but we can reflect on the consequences. This transformed the creature into a plain monster, which people feared because it was only a strong body without a mind. It was easier for Frankenstein to wish to destroy the creature and for the audience to root for him because the creature didn't resemble a human as much. And this relieved its creator of the moral burden that is one of the central dilemmas of the novel. In a Frankensteinian model for adaptation studies, Jellenik writes, "From its initial publication, Frankenstein was recognized as politically radical, and there was literally no place on the London stage for that. This was due to the Licensing Act of 1737, a British law requiring all theatrical plays to be approved by the Lord Chamberlain before performance. This act allowed the government to ban or censor plays with political or controversial content. This was one of the main reasons for its severe transformation, but they also wanted to entertain a wide audience with simple storylines, so they added romance, comedy, and clear moral lessons. This first adaptation was the only one Mary Shelley ever saw, and although she was happy with some aspects of it and with the fact that it made her famous, she wrote in a letter, "The story is not well managed." It's interesting to see how many elements considered central to Frankenstein in popular culture were actually created in this play. But many more changes were to come. As this was so popular, it generated a second printing of Shelley's novel, which was not common, and it stimulated the creation of more theatrical adaptations. Hollywood's favorite monster. Some of the most widespread images about Frankenstein come from the 1931 Universal film directed by James Whale. But how good of an adaptation is it? Well, first of all, this movie is actually based on another play, Frankenstein, An Adventure in the Macabre by Peggy Webling. So there's even more distance between the novel and this film. And you can tell, there are actually hardly any similarities in the arguments. But I want to focus on what I consider the most significant difference, the creature's motivations. In this movie, Dr. Frankenstein's assistant selects a criminal brain for the creature. This, as it seems, is the reason why the creature is violent. It's just a consequence of the type of brain that was inserted into his body. However, in the book, the creature isn't naturally inclined to wrongdoing. Actually, he looks for a community that would accept him. He wants to love and to be loved. In Mary Shelley's story, his violence has two main sources: his resentment towards his creator, who abandons him and regrets creating him, and the wound of rejection. He's not only ugly to human eyes, he's made out of corpses, so he is an abomination. And for this, he knows he'll never be accepted. Another terrible difference is that in the book, the creature is intelligent and sensible. His motivations are complex, and he questions the human desire for progress without ethical considerations. In this movie, yes, he is the product of a crazy scientist, but the creature can hardly question Frankenstein's actions because he can't talk. This dehumanizes him, while a strong line of the novel is the humanization of otherness. In Looking at the Monster, Frankenstein and Film, James Heffernan argues, "In the first talking film version, the monster is totally silenced and thus forced, like the monster of Richard Brinsley Peake's Presumption or The Fate of Frankenstein, the first of many plays based on the novel, to make gesture and expression tell a fraction of his story, which is mutilated as well as severely abridged." In this movie, movie, we can imagine that the creature feels something like sympathy based on his facial expressions when he plays with a little girl, throwing flowers at a lake. But he's such a brute, he ends up throwing the girl into the lake and accidentally killing her. This instigates the famous mob scene in which the villagers chase the creature with torches and apparently kill him by setting a windmill on fire. And this seems to reinstate normalcy. Frankenstein is hurt, but he lives. Whereas in the book, we have quite the opposite ending, where Frankenstein dies after seeing all of his loved ones perish as a consequence of his own actions. No matter how accurately this movie captures the essence of the novel, its role in cinema history is undeniable, as well as its impact on popular culture. It has been referenced over and over again, including in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. People have been wondering what we all think every time a new adaptation is released. Will it be faithful? Well, it's complicated. There are many differences regarding the storyline and the characters. Just focusing on the beginning, Victor Frankenstein had a happy family, and he didn't have any concrete personal reasons for his ambitious pursuit. His character was more of a symbol for the man who sought an unrestricted advancement of science. The movie created a psychological justification for his actions based on his family history, which added interesting depth to his character. In the book, Victor worked alone. He hid from the world, whereas the movie references the many adaptations where he worked with assistants and exposed his progress to the world. I'm not going to go over every change, but overall, I felt like they took the bones of the original story and filled it with fantasy and action to modernize the story in an appealing way to contemporary audiences. Most importantly, I felt like many changes were meaningful. For example, I really like how grotesquely explicit the scene is where Victor assembles the creature's body. In Mary Shelley's time, she could only allude to this process because of the quorum, whereas nowadays they can be explicit and playful, incorporating whimsical music to make Victor seem like a magical butcher. Once the creature came to life, unlike other adaptations, he wasn't represented like a brainless zombie. Instead, he feels like a child. I appreciated how the creature's first words were Victor, and how he said them while pointing at himself, as a wink to the fact that in popular culture, many times the creature is referenced with his creator's name. Let's not forget that, in a sense, the creature is Victor's son, so he should have received the last name Frankenstein. And for a while in the movie, Victor does act like a father. He takes care of him, he cuts his hair, he tends his wounds, he's tired and deprived of sleep. But he's not a very good father. And it feels like Victor somehow is aware of how the audience perceives him as the villain. So he starts acting like one, being violent against the defenseless creature. And I think there's a relevant difference here. In the book, Victor rejects the creature for his monstrosity, but also for his intelligence, because he reminds Victor of his cruel and selfish actions. In the movie, Victor rejects the creature for his stupidity, as if he were rejecting the brainless versions created by the adaptations. But then we hear what has been silenced many times, the voice of the creature. His perspective is moving, and I really adored how they transformed the episode with the Lacy family to create a scene in which, even for a short period, the creature gets what he wanted the most: a friend. Now, I need to mention the few aspects I didn't like. This movie is less subtle than the original novel, regarding morality, humanity, and monstrosity. We didn't need a William telling Victor, "You're the monster," because it's pretty obvious. That is the inevitable Netflix effect, where writers need to make sure that ideas are extremely clear in case there's someone watching at home while they scroll on social media and God forbid they miss the point. And then, from my perspective, there's a bit too much gory violence. Particularly at the beginning of the novel, the creature feels a bit like a Marvel monster, screaming and breaking necks left and right. Although I understand that those type of scenes are fundamental for entertaining modern audiences, and I see how the gore is not completely out of place within the Gothic aesthetic, I just thought it was a bit much. Conclusion. The challenge of adaptations relies on creating an original piece of fiction while honoring the source. With Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, there are so many adaptations that sometimes the meaning gets lost in translation. However, I believe Guillermo del Toro's film brought a new life to the story while respecting the original philosophy. As a result, he created an extremely entertaining and emotional movie. The interpretations were great. Jacob Elordi in particular was otherworldly. The visuals were stunning and highlighted the whimsical aspect of the Gothic aesthetic, which was intensified by the soundtrack. I think it was worth adding yet another interpretation to the universe based on Mary Shelley's novel. But let me know your thoughts. Do you think they've killed Frankenstein again? Or do you think they've kept it alive? If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you for your time.